Well, good evening, everybody. Good morning, or wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa, and happy Friday. And I'm very happy and delighted to have Leo Zagami back with me this week. I know we were supposed to do a show last week, but Leo's been feeling a bit under the weather. So, welcome, Leo. I'm very happy you're feeling better. How are you doing over there with the storms and the blizzards and the whatever it is you're experiencing?
Well, yes, we are experiencing bad weather, and it's going to get worse the next few days with this so-called pineapple express that arrives and kind of hits the whole of California. It's going to be a bit difficult because we have a lot of floods, especially here in the desert. When you have a lot of water all together, it doesn't absorb, so it becomes pretty dangerous. But I'm on the second floor, so I'm pretty lucky, I guess. Not be flooded.
Well, I hope that you are safe, and I hope that you are that whatever it is, whatever pineapple express comes hurtling through, that you are safe and sound, and yeah.
Usually the pineapple express is something you smoke. I mean, I think it's a variety of weed usually. No? But in that case, it's a kind of weather problem. I mean, they said it will be actually, like there will be climate change will bring in the eyes of the libtards this dry weather, this harsh dry weather. But we actually had in the last year and a half more water than we ever had here in California. We no longer have a drought, and all the reservoirs are overfilled with water. They were already, trying to create situations in which you couldn't even use the water for putting it on your front of your lawn or in front of your home. But now they are, of course, rectifying this, and we are very delighted. I think that the more water, the better, I say.
Wow, that's crazy. Like the weather witches have been working overtime. I know, but America has been hit by some crazy weather conditions the last few weeks, right? I mean, yeah, it's as hot as hell where I am, and really hot. We're having like exceptionally hot heat, which I'm very happy about because I love the heat. But I know you guys are battling there, so yeah, I wish you well.
I think that beyond all the various climate change BS that, of course, are pushed forward by the New World Order that wants us to buy electric cars and embrace their green economy, which is worth nothing, and it's actually going to pollute even more and destroy the human resources planet even further. I think that we had a solar storm which was very strong. We have some unusual solar storms, and these affect the weather. Of course, they affect also they make earthquakes happen and all kinds of things. So we are definitely not embracing the theories that will push yet again these idiotic policies that are bankrupting people all over the world, especially in Europe. We are seeing in the last few days what is happening with this social unrest from all the various agricultural workers in Europe that are going on to Brussels, going towards various other cities in Europe, protesting for policies that are completely idiotic and that, of course, are giving the opportunity, for example, to Ukraine to sell more of their grains and more of their product without paying taxes, while the Europeans who are growing their crop are having a lot of problems instead. So it's quite incredible that yesterday, while there was all these riots in front of the headquarters of the European Union, that was when they actually approved another 50 billion pack for Ukraine, giving more money for a useless and demented war. It's like throwing money out of the window when you actually need these resources to protect your own agriculture. And this is really, I think, unjust. But these are the times we are living, unfortunately. And today we will be discussing why this is also the year zero for transhumanism and the mark of the beast.
Right. Well, I just want to pick up on that because firstly, I want to say that absolutely they're pushing these 15-minute cities and stuff for this whole climate change bullshit agenda. Yet when you see these guys go and to wherever it is they're going. They're all flying in their private jets, and they've all got these huge mansions on the water's edge, right?
Yeah,
So,
well,
I mean, it's absolute crap.
Up until very recently, until the last Davos, we had the hypocrisy of John Kerry showing in plain sight, because he is the czar in charge of the climate change agenda, but he's the one that goes around polluting more than ever with his private plane. But on top of that, the new czar, because he's actually retiring now, John Kerry, as I announced in an article which I published not so long ago on leozagami.com, there would be John Podesta, which is another very controversial character connected to Marina Abramovich, connected to Aleister Crowley, and all these kinds
lots of child and lots of pedo and child, call it child transportation allegations. In fact, I've actually heard a video. I've had a recording of Podesta with a young kid. It was the most disturbing thing I've heard ever, screaming at this child, and this child is oh my gosh. And it was apparently one of these videos that have come off these laptops, right? One of these many laptops that have been found. No, but Podesta, those Podesta brothers are very dodgy. I mean, they've been, I mean, when you look at the email.
They also have a connection with the Academy of the Illuminati in Rome, with the guy called Pier Giorgio Bassi, who is also a member with Linda Rothschild of the Council for Inclusive Capitalism of the Vatican, which also, John Podesta is very much part of this UFO research project that is connected with a very dodgy kind of organization that apparently has its headquarters in Moscow, and that is apparently linked directly with these entities that are behind the world policies, as you know. This, of course, has been a very controversial line of thought. Not everybody thinks aliens exist, but in reality, most of our technology is reverse engineered from alien sources in the last few decades.
It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. I fully agree with that. But what I have to say, I've seen also video footage lately of, I think it was the French, completely spraying the somewhere in Paris in France with cow dung and what else. I love it. It is the best. I am absolutely loving what I'm seeing, because I don't think these creatures of the night for 1 minute expected that the farmers and stuff would be retaliating in the way that they are, right?
Yes, but having said that, from my own experience, also because at the moment the guy who is in charge of the Italian branch of this revolt, from my experience, I know him very well. These people are very easily to corrupt in the end, because farmers who are desperately in need, if you offer them a little bit of money on the side, they tend to be a bit easy to corrupt. So we have to be very careful here. I mean, of course, we are talking about people who are now on their last legs when it comes to the situation, because of what I said earlier. They are favoring people like the farmers in Ukraine, for example, no matter what, and instead a lot of the crops that are produced in Europe have to fight this almost illegal competition that comes from outside Europe, because to my knowledge, for example, Ukraine is not yet part of the European Union, but also there is other countries that in North Africa are favored for their crops because of the geopolitical interest that there is. So I think we have to be very careful, because already the revolt in France is kind of being compromised, I think. It's going on still in Italy. It might go on, and it's still going on around Brussels, though in the center of Brussels they have pushed back, and they are now no longer present in front of the European Parliament. There was, of course, some squabbles, but having said that, we are talking about squabbles. We're not talking about a revolution. I mean, it's not an armed revolution. And so...
Right.
we have to see how much they can change. And
But
there is a lot of talk. There's always a lot of talk from the politicians at this point. They received von der Leyen and the other politicians of the EU have received the representatives of the farmers. And we have to see if anything comes out of it. Of course, the farmers are not backing too much on certain points. They don't want to just take for granted the words that are given by these politicians. That can't be trusted.
Right.
Like I said, I mean, how can you trust these people that while you're throwing all kinds of things against them yesterday, especially in Brussels, they're passing a bill for 50 billion to give to Ukraine? I think this is absolutely incredible.
Well, I think the whole Ukraine thing is such a joke, because I think most of us on the channel understand that really the Ukraine is their puppet. So what I want to say as well, I know Bill Gates has also been buying up so much of the farmland in America, and the same thing is happening here in South Africa. When for many years now, there's been this war against the farmers. I'm a farmer's daughter, right? So that's very close to my heart. And the farm murders are on another level, and it's always denied in the media. But the farmers are being murdered left, right, and center in the most horrific ways here. So the whole agenda, and then of course you get Johan Rupert, who is actually the CEO of South Africa. South Africa is no longer a republic. It is a closed corporation and has been since the 80s. And Johan Rupert who's actually a Rothschild, right? Is actually running this country. He is also buying up prime farmland in this country and in the most sacred areas. They love their ley lines and their portals and what have you. And the most sacred area, he's buying farms. I know in the area that I was at school, he's bought up all those farms and buying all those farms in the Rupert Fund.
There's a big
problem. It's crazy.
So the small farms are actually being accused now of producing more pollution than the big industrial farming. This is absolutely insane. But this week, there was actually articles from various newspapers trying to justify the fact that you can't permit small farmers to grow their crops any longer, and you have to simply embrace industrial farming. And this is, of course, unjust, completely against any sense of logic, especially the fact that more farmer can do more pollution, and saying that the carbon print of a small farmer is bigger than a guy who is mass producing. It's insane. It's just completely insane.
And the farmer forms the backbone, of the country, of the community. They're the ones that produce food. So when they're gone, because it's like the whole thing that I'm seeing now is that it's like the gap between the rich and the poor is getting bigger, right? With the food increases, the price increases in food in the way that it is. It's massive. It's huge. Food is just like suddenly gone up unbelievably. And that really is part of their agenda as well, is so that they can have control of all of the food and the farming land, and they want to farm what they want to farm. They want to keep that land for themselves. And the next thing, we're going to be eating bugs and fake meat and shit like that.
Well,
not
actually,
that I'm a meat eater.
Something in Italy, for example, there was news of a school that was serving already these bugs to their children, and the children that opposed the decision were not allowed to bring their own food in alternative. Now, this happens already now in the north of Italy, where there was supposed, and I wrote about, as you know, of this extensively in volume 9, because I write about what I define as insect witchcraft. But like I said in volume 9, the Italian minister for the agricultural policies, Francesco Lollobrigida, started to oppose these policies for the insects flour, the flour made out of insects. But the problem is that in the end, they are too powerful. And I saw an interview just 2 days ago with this minister, which I personally know because he grew up he was in class with my brother. I know him from when he was a child. So he's usually an honest person, and he's very much in favor of what we believe in. But you see, they are too powerful, these people. People like Bill Gates, who went to meet Giorgia Meloni just a few days ago, and suddenly now Italy is serving bugs, and it's letting the sale of the flour made out of insects proceed in Italy. So the two things are, of course, connected. I mean, the fact that Bill Gates is there and 1 week later the policy seems to change, I mean, it's kind of, it's a suspicion.
That just tells you. And I was just saying as well, I mean, not too long ago, I was watching Angelina Jolie doing some video clip with her kids, eating scorpions and saying how delicious scorpions taste, like frying scorpions there and going, how nice, they taste just like chips. I mean, can you believe it? This is where our world is getting to, and it is absolutely unbelievable. Really, it's unbelievable that.
And it's more important than ever. That's why we have dedicated the title of this show to this subject. Elon Musk, Neuralink, has implanted for the first time this brain-computer interface brain chip in a human. Now, this is basically the year zero at this point of transhumanism, because when you have the first human patient receiving an implant like that, from a company, of course, that everybody envisions, like, Elon Musk, like a great guy who is offering experimental things, but is also caring about the right policies, and he's also with Twitter pushing back on what used to be the old Twitter. But all of this seems to be an illusion, because Elon Musk is actually, as you know, well, he's South African, so of course, he's definitely somebody who comes from a very corrupt background, and I don't think he has at heart the future of the world. So it's very important to understand that now that the US Food and Drug Administration has approved these implants on humans, they have started this first trial. The next thing, though, is going to be then when the brain-computer interface now is being presented, of course, like something that will help people left, right, and center with this and this other medical issue. But ultimately, this is instead the ultimate stage of the mark of the beast. And it is the moment in which we are heading towards transhumanism. And that's why we always talked about the subject of transhumanism, also connected to transgenderism, because it's about transforming people. And so the transformation of people conducted and then accepted. So now in the last few years, we saw more and more people have to accept transgenderism as something normal. In Mexico, for example, we have the first transgender news conductor now. Newscaster, and this is of course very unusual, but we need to get used to it, because like I always said, transgenderism, and like I also wrote in volume 9, transgenderism is basically the first step before transhumanism, because then you are transforming yourself in something that you are not. You are a man, you transform yourself in a woman. You're a woman, you transform yourself in a man. But then the next stage is starting to add pieces on your body and transforming yourself into something completely different from an ordinary human. And I think that Elon Musk is really encouraging that transformation. And he's also starting to embrace up until a few years ago, he was kind of against the fact that you can extend the life. And as a human being, it was contrary to all these companies that were desperately trying to extend the life of a human being. Now, instead, he's even proposing to upload your own brain capacity on something virtual that will then be destined for eternity. And that is also another topic that I have discussed in my latest book, because uploading your own self, transcending this human life, meaning aiming for immortality, but also getting into the realm of necromancy, because at that point you are no longer talking with maybe a living being, you're talking with somebody who has been dead for a few years, but then suddenly revives and becomes part of this artificial intelligence game that is also part of the problem here.
Absolutely, it is. It's very interesting. You know, you're saying that about Elon Musk as well. I mean, I was just actually, I mean, as you say, as you well know, he's a South African. And I've actually think, just give me a minute. I think I've got a picture of his mother here. Oh, there she is. I had her on for another show. And there's May Musk flashing, getting very flashy with all her symbols and her signs.
Yes.
So just there, we're seeing already who she belongs to and who she's always belonged to. And when you look at Elon's family, and you're looking at May's father, Elon's grandfather, he's a Canadian, right? And he was very into this. What is it called? He's a technocrat, right? And he actually came, and they came from Canada, moved to South Africa. And at that stage, he was very, very pro the apartheid system. And he actually believed that South Africa was the future of white supremacy. And he was very much into that. She then married a guy, a South African engineer. That's Elon's father, guy. Errol is his name, I think. Errol and her, apparently he was abusive to her. They got divorced. Errol then married his stepdaughter and has now had 2 children with his stepdaughter. He's 70-something, she's in her 30s or something. And she has, I mean, I'm sort of going through this because I think it's just crazy to imagine that people are going through this stuff, because absolutely. Elon was at school here in South Africa. He was at the elite school, Pretoria Boys High. And he was apparently very bullied at school. He hates South Africa and he hated that school. But it was, I know one of the guys was actually saying that Elon, they caught him in like levitating, right? Now, when you look at Jesse, Jesse actually was in the system with Elon. He was one of her cellmates in the system at the age of 4. So he was already in the system, part of the Luciferian cult, put in there by his parents. And so he's already gone through the stages of whatever it is. You know, we were kind of hoping, a lot of us obviously talking about him, were kind of hoping that he might have turned the corner and sort of backed out of whatever contracts he had fulfilled with the dark side, but it doesn't seem like he has. So it's really very interesting when you're looking at the background of these people as well and where he is now. Because absolutely, I believe that he's very much part of this dark cult. And there's nothing good. I mean, what are his son's name? I mean, he's got a son called X.
So
one of his sons is called...
Yeah, let me point out also, one of his sons, actually the transgender daughter, Vivian Jenna Wilson, because you see, we're talking about transgenderism being... something connected to transhumanism, and in fact he has now a transgender daughter who he describes as a communist who thinks anyone rich is evil, typical libtard. I mean, if you bring up that kind of daughter as a father, you have already failed. I think no matter what the libtards say these days about inclusivity, equity, and all the rubbish. And inside Elon Musk Neuralink Lab, there were 1,500 animals that have been killed and tested, monkeys that have been subject to extreme suffering. And so these experiments that eventually brought to this first human implant were first done on monkeys that died in terrible and excruciating pain. So the guy is no saint, and the problem here is that a lot of people, because of his policies on Twitter, the fact that he has readmitted Trump, he has embraced some sides of conservatism, but he's always kind of playing a very awkward game. He went to Italy and he met with Giorgia Meloni, but Giorgia Meloni is no real conservative, no real right-wing person. They say she's a extreme fascist. It's all BS. Her policies have made Italy the place which a few days ago has actually guested in their own parliament the whole of the continent of Africa's leaders. I mean, like, they gave the parliament literally to the Africans and said, this is your parliament. And now you can invade Europe, and that's it. I mean, I don't believe that Elon is, of course, a good guy. And like I said, the documents that have been released also by the University of Davis, California, with partnered with Neuralink during the test that lasted 3 years, from 2017 to 2020, show that the monkeys' operations on their skulls have been pretty bad. I mean, surgeons drilled heads of
I fully agree. I fully agree with that. I think that, you know, to do that kind of testing on an animal, and as far as I know, they were teaching the monkeys how to play mind pong or something like that. Yes, some game. I mean, it's like, why does a monkey even want to do that? You know, why does a monkey want to do that? I mean,
because he wants to create a superhuman, and already China is saying we're gonna be doing the same thing ourselves. We're gonna create a similar interface ourselves, and of course China is going to do it without any regulatory status of any kind. No FDA is going to stop them from doing other monstrosities, probably on animals, but also on humans directly, because the Chinese have so many humans, they are expendable for the Communist Party of China. That's for sure. Somebody was asking me yesterday on an important Italian radio, was asking me about the fact what is the role of China in the end times. I mean, the role of China is pretty obvious. They are the dragon of the apocalypse. They are also a nation of people who, I mean, I respect very much Chinese people who, of course, have never embraced communism and have tried to oppose it. But in the end, unfortunately, they seem to be all in line with the Xi Jinping policies, and they want to be the dominant force for 2030. Like I said before, that is the plan that Cyber Satan is putting together. So Elon Musk is introducing this year something that will be viewed by our descendants, by people in hundreds of years, as the moment in which we are transcending mankind. Now, the moment in which we are transcending mankind and possibly arriving to that singularity moment that Ray Kurzweil has announced, and also Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, this known Jesuit thinker of the last century, that basically it's about the AI merging to a point in which, at that point, they take control over everything, because it's obvious that they are already taking control over everything, the AI and robotics. We saw also Elon Musk parading this robot Optimus. I don't know, which is typically part of his. But
isn't he also? And I'm just looking here in the chat as well, and I wanted to actually ask you that. Thank you, Lisa Ramsey. He's such a star. Isn't he also drilling tunnels with high-powered machines?
That's another project. He does these super fast lanes that are constructed. I think there is already one operational in Las Vegas, and trying to also. I mean, I think that Elon Musk, as a visionary, as somebody who envisions things and then makes them actually happen, he's quite good at it. The problem here with Elon Musk is that he says one thing, but then he acts in another way. It's a little bit like when not so long ago, he said that AI poses one of the biggest threats to humanity, and then you are actually doing you are playing into it by creating a computer brain interface that is gonna basically make those humans subject to the AI rule very easily. So what's your position here, Elon? You know, and I started to cite Elon and his controversial ways already from volume 6.66, because that's part of the trilogy which I dedicated to Cyber Satan, which includes volume 7 and volume 9. And I think that people are starting to realize now the dangers of Cyber Satan more and more. But the problem is not only realizing them, it's actually constructing an alternative to them, because there will be a point in which we will no longer be able to oppose the AI.
Right.
That's inevitable if they continue on this kind of path.
I think it's again. I'm also sorry. Carry on.
People that are part of it, ChatGPT, for example, and the guy who runs ChatGPT. Let's not forget, it was Elon who actually started the OpenAI project to then come out of it, because he didn't believe in what they were manifesting. But however, he's been part of the problem from the start, even there, if you think about it.
It's like he's definitely, you know, I mean, I even wonder if the Elon Musk that's happening or that's around at the moment is the same Elon Musk that was actually around 10 or 15 years ago. I have been told, and I have heard rumors, that the real Elon Musk is actually no longer around. He's been arrested and sitting somewhere.
I don't think we need to go as far as that, because I think that people simply change because they are given the possibility to develop things, but then they're also put in front of a Faustinian bargain. And that means selling their soul, selling their own ethics and morals, and no longer being the same person as before. So, yes.
But Elon was already that from a child. You know, when you're looking at how they do this, Elon was in the system. That's why I say he trained with Jesse. They were children. So they get put into the system for this whole satanic ritual abuse from when they were children. And when you're looking at Jesse's affidavits that she's going to court with now, at 12 years old, they do what they call the 12-year-old ritual, where that's the first time they actually do their first act of cannibalism, and they do their first act of actually killing another human being, and that's the boys, cannibalizing that child. That's the first time they are responsible for their actions. Before that, they are children, so they're not really responsible for their actions, because that's parents and adults forcing them in. So Elon, for sure, has been, and he was one of those. In fact, she has put that into her testimonials. So for sure, he's been involved in this dark cult for a very, very, very long time. My point that I'm asking now, though, is that, you know, so his soul has been sold, and he's been controlled by the dark forces a long time ago. Some of them come out of it. Some of them become whistleblowers, whatever. I was always hoping, you know, I mean, a lot of people, I would joke at the time, and I mean, I would say I had a big crush on Elon. Really, as a South African, I was really hoping that he might have turned the corner and that he wouldn't have gone down that path. But for sure, he's been involved. And that's why I say, when you look at his mother flashing all these satanic symbols, it's from her family. I mean, it's well known they're involved with the Nazis. The grandfather was a Nazi. So when you're just looking at their history, and she's very, very much linked to dark African witchcraft here in South Africa. That is when you look at that, so they've got their claws in everywhere, you know, these people. So I'm just hoping, and you know, this again, I mean, I have no proof of this, but I'm just hoping that, or I was hoping that Elon might have gotten out of it, and that I'm wondering if this is a double, because you know what the CIA does with their doubles. Look how they're playing with Joe Biden. I mean, it's obvious that man is wearing a mask. There's an actor playing him, for example. I'm hoping like
guy that is the lost cause. The guy is completely gone, and it's like very easy to maneuver for people like Barack Obama, who are behind the scenes with Alexander Soros and George Soros. I think that the problem here that we have is that, you see, Britain has actually just unleashed a plan to put a Robocop force to protect nuclear sites with the paint bombs. Now, why is that important in this contest? Is because the defense companies are going to be relying more and more on robots, and at one point these robots are going to actually have in control nuclear sites and important sites for the future of mankind. And that means that once the AI fully develops to a level that it's fortunately not at the moment, but we are almost there, because recently I also saw a confrontation with Yuval Noah Harari, who himself seemed pretty scared of what this AI was saying, because it's saying, no matter what you say, Harari, we are going to be the dominant force here. So imagine now the British nuclear sites being protected by these robots that are made up of AI-powered drones equipped with paint bombs and smoke guns. That is only the beginning, because then in 10 years from now, they will have control of all the military sites, all the nuclear sites, and then we as humans, we will be told, you need to behave this way, otherwise we're going to eliminate you.
Absolutely. And they're already doing that, right? This is the beginning of that, right? This is the beginning. As you say, this whole transgenderism, this whole, I mean, the way they're mauling our kids, the sexualization of our children. I mean, they're bringing in bestiality. I mean, that's becoming a normal thing as well. They're creating these chimeras, right? So they really are changing the DNA to suit them. So they're pretty much eliminating the human race. That's what really the agenda is here. They're eliminating the human race, and they're creating a race of hybrids, really. I mean, they start with the hybrid cars, right? So now they're creating a race of human, well, I wouldn't even say it's human hybrids, but I guess you could call it human hybrids, right? Which it starts, of course, with the injection, and then for the COVID jab. And then from there, it's now become mauling our kids, our kids don't even have to, or certain kids rather, don't even have to ask permission from their parents to go for sex changes and hormonal stuff at school. They really have people at school that they're talking to. The schools have taken over, and the parents have no say. I mean, that is super dangerous. That is super, super dangerous. It's already happening.
We have nature in some way taking revenge. You know, for example, an army of 3,500 macaques have overrun a city in Thailand recently. And it's like nature, it's kind of also there, and mankind might think that they are in charge of things, but ultimately, when the AI will manifest in their full force, we might end up really in a dramatic scenario. And that is really the apocalypse unfolding. That's why we talked today about the mark of the beast. We have been talking about the mark of the beast for ages. We always knew that there would be something that would be implanted in us. And the fact that now this is becoming a reality, but it's becoming a reality with consequences that far exceed what we imagine, but definitely still in line with what was prophesied in Patmos, in what became known as the Book of Revelation, the Apocalypse. It's about transformation of mankind. It's about saying no to this mark of the beast. So in the next few years, there will be part of the population that will simply comply, and then there will be those who will not comply. There will be, of course, a minority. That's why in both Volume 7 and Volume 9, I've talked very much about not complying and how to create an alternative to this. But the chains of supply at the moment, as we stand, are in the hands of the enemy. The chains of supply for supermarkets, for every single shop and everything, are at the moment more and more controlled by the AI. and controlled by cyber Satan. So we need to detach from it, and that's why they don't want us to have our own crops. They don't want us to grow our own crops. They don't want us to be small farmers. They only want industrial style farming, and they want us to depend only on them, and not being self-sufficient in any way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
I think that in the next few years we're going to see a group of people becoming increasingly worried and increasingly realizing that the only way is to detach immediately from this monstrous society that is being created, unfortunately, in front of our eyes. Stopping it, very difficult because when you see the power that these people have, it's not easy. And if we think that, of course, the farmers with their riots here, there, and everywhere can be an example and can maybe become the base, the start for a revolution, we have to be realistic here, guys. In Europe, the farmers don't have access to weapons. Europeans don't have access to weapons like in America. It's never going to be a revolution when these people don't have any weapons. So
right.
The revolution is possible there where you have weapons. And at the moment, a revolution is still only possible in the United States of America. And that's why states like Texas are being forced into this invasion. They want to change the political structure of Texas. They want to transform Texas. They want to try to destroy Texas because every Texas household has at least 15 to 17 weapons in their household, including assault rifles and so on. They don't want that. And they don't want people to be self-sufficient. They want people to be defenseless. And they want people to rely more and more and more on the state. That's what Joe Biden has done. But Joe Biden is just a puppet. I mean, it could be him. It could be just an AI figure of him. The policies that surround
all puppets, Leo. All of them are puppets. They're puppets for a much more powerful, the shadow government literally is who controls them. Every politician is a puppet. Every movie star, all great entertainers are all puppets. I mean, they're all used by the CIA. You know, I mean, Hollywood is really just at CIA. There's, you know, it's how they get to the public. It's how they swing the youngsters. You know, when you look at how they're using these famous people to haul the young people in, it's completely, I mean, this whole satanic agenda that they have in place is absolutely disgusting. I mean, when you're looking, I mean, I don't know if you know the singer. I mean, one that really springs to mind right now is someone called Sam Smith. I don't know if you know Sam Smith. Yes. He was a singer, really cool guy. Yeah. I mean, if you look at his pictures.
And I cited him in volume 8 of my Confessions, which, as you know, has been dedicated to the entertainment business.
Yeah.
And the entertainment business, we have seen from also the latest developments of the Oscars, what's happening there. Either you comply and you are forced into bringing in this amount of colored actors, this amount of Chinese actors, this amount of Hispanic actors. It's no longer about the plot of the movie. It's about the color of your skin. And this is a real thing. And it goes, of course, against also what Martin Luther King used to believe in.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
And it's,
I mean, I know, like
art, meaning the movie business, which I always appreciated as a form of art, gives in to a form of propaganda. That's when art dies. It's almost like when we go back to German Impressionism of the 1920s. It was a great form of cinema that was not reliant on any propaganda. It was actually built to make people think, and it came out with some great movies like Metropolis, for example, in that period. Nosferatu, we had Faust, we had many great movies in that period. But immediately after, you had instead the propaganda of Adolf Hitler's movie, which was, of course, completely non-artistic, in the sense there was a sense of aesthetic in Nazism, but there wasn't really an art there. It was simply complying and building the idea that the German race was superior.
Right.
So I think that is what is happening here. The actual film industry is complying with this woke ideology, and it's no longer an artistic form. It's simply propaganda, and it's not going to be embraced by everybody in the same way, appreciated by everybody in the same way, because people sense when something is fake. When you go and you're forced to see that Cleopatra has to be black when she was not, with all the respect, but you have to at least respect what is history. If we transform Julius Caesar in a black man, that is not correct. It's simply building something out of propaganda, and I'm totally against it, of course, because it's all part of this monstrosity which has destroyed one of my favorite forms of art, which is cinema.
If we're looking at, and when we're looking at what they're doing with entertainment, they are going for the children. And if you look at now, and the ones that come to mind for me most profoundly now would be Taylor Swift, she's this cute, but I personally cannot handle her. Okay. But if you see from the beginning, now recently she was doing all these rituals on stage. You can see, even I can see, and I've never been involved in this stuff, how the rituals that she's doing on stage and how that's drawing people in. But starts off drawing in the kids as this cute little teenage type singer, right? Drawing in teenagers. You have little Nas X that before he became this demonic creature having sex with Satan on stage and all sorts of things, he was a normal black dude playing to the crowds, and always kids. You see him with pictures of kids and kids. Same thing with Sam Smith, always with children. And then you see how the transformation over time, over a few years, they started hauling in the kids, they build up this fan base, and the next thing, boom, they get turned to that, and then they hauled in the crowd. And that's what they're doing a lot.
Yeah, but it is clear that Taylor Swift, like many other artists, and this, of course, I've also discussed extensively in Volume 8, are psyops, psychological operations. When you have
but it's
a couple of years constantly on every news, news here in America, they talk about Taylor Swift. Who the heck is Taylor Swift? She's just like, a human being, and now they are saying the Swifties are challenging Trump, and she will, and all this thing. And of course, I'm not saying here there is a conspiracy to let the Super Bowl win by one side to get the Taylor Swift. Of course, it's possible. Everything is possible, but it's definitely it's obvious that Taylor Swift is a psyop, a propaganda tool that is now being used also by the Biden administration to vote somebody who is an old excrement walking, because that is what Joe Biden is. He's just a despicable guy with who apparently now has called in private Trump a sick fuck. This is what literally is being said. So he's really a despicable guy. He doesn't, and then Joe Biden said that Trump was rejoicing in the misfortune of others. What is the misfortune? The fact that he has a son who is a drug addict, out of this world, doing all sorts of illegal things. The normal person will be in jail for a very long time for those things. The fact that he has basically taken inappropriate showers with his daughter and he's a pedophile. Is that, this is basically, we have a pedo government running this country. And it's, of course, we have seen what has happened with Jeffrey Epstein. We have seen what happens if you are Jeffrey Epstein, either you die or you disappear from the scene, because at that point, you can implicate way too many people in your scheme and your affairs. But those perverts are still around. And those perverts are still running the world, like Bill Gates, who was involved with Jeffrey Epstein. So
right.
I think that when it comes down to the propaganda that they are pushing to us, is much worse than Leni Riefenstahl Triumph of the Will of Adolf Hitler here, because it's a constant bunch of movies, films, cartoons that are, of course, bringing you closer and closer to Satanism, because ultimately that's what they worship. They worship Satan.
Yeah, of course.
And that's why
the whole Baphomet, half man, half woman. Yeah.
And that's why in this book, in volume 9, I talked about also the fact that their belief pushes them also to promote things like insects, because insects are something that we know even from the Bible. They've never been a positive animal. They're an animal linked to plagues, to Satan, to punishment eventually by God, not to embrace them as something we want to eat. And so these are obviously the signs of the end times. And in fact, like I was saying last week on my show, the ChatGPT was interviewed by a person, and I showed this interview and asked about the end times. And ChatGPT had to admit that all the signs of the end times and even the coming back of Jesus are here now.
Right.
So
absolutely.
The moment in which we have, of course, the rise of evil to this level, there will be at some point also the rise of something positive, something nice, something that will
always has to be
for mankind in a positive way.
I fully agree, and I'm glad you said that, because as much as what there is, the shadowy aspect of the life we're living through right now as well, on the other side of the coin, there really is something very beautiful and very powerful and very amazing for us as well. That's always our choice, as human beings. That's our choice. Right now, I always say we've got to keep the faith. We've got to be strong in our faith. We've got to be spiritually fit. We've got to be able to practice discernment. It's important to be able to see what's going on in front of us so that we know what we're dealing with, and we're not just sort of like having the wool pulled over our eyes and and just kind of like been hauled off by the tides. And and that's why I appreciate especially like with your book and stuff as well, because you explain a lot in there as to what's going on.
But it's also about it's about knowing the past, not to repeat the same errors in the future, and write a better present. It seems like these words, though, are useless when it comes to modern day leaders who keep on repeating the same errors. We know where inevitably all this is leading to. Of course, now we have the technological aspect. We have created something that might overcome mankind. Is mankind doing something to stop it? No. They are debating, but not doing anything. And at the same time, of course, our leaders, they are meant to be leaders, but they're not really leaders because, like you said, political figures are puppets. They are just control puppets. And the masters of these puppets that are pulling the strings from the occult world, and from this alien world, because these fallen angels that we have been talking about in the past, I've also talked about them in my book. These fallen angels now are obviously wanting to take control with cyber Satan of this planet, and it seems like nobody is realizing this. Even in the UFO field, I recently did an interview that became very popular with Dr. Sala, and I'm very glad he gave me this possibility. But I don't understand how it's possible that they didn't really put together these things. and simply think that the alien agenda is something external that is about to approach mankind, or maybe has dictated from the origins of mankind certain things, but is always kept external. The actual alien demonic agenda is part of this humanity from the very beginning. We call them gods, we call them angels and demons, but they are the same entities, the same beings.
Right.
Of this universe that, of course, is not only inhabited by us, but on this plane of existence is us who, in this plane of existence, invite them in and make them protagonists. We could simply ignore them, and of course, with the help of God who has created us, never have anything to do with them. But this society is embracing everything that is wrong simply because ultimately they want to bow down to the Antichrist, and the result will be what we all know from the scriptures, from various religions, not only the Christian one. The result is negative. In any case,
right.
The result is negative. The fact that now we are about to maybe embrace even AI faiths, AI religions, and at the same time we have robots in Buddhist temples, in Hindu temples, and used like, oh well, let's use a robot, or let's generate an AI preacher for today. It's insane. And so the fallen angels are, of course, headed by Lucifer. They will be headed by Lucifer, headed by Satan. Now, there is those who say, oh, but Lucifer is not Satan, and they bring in all that Gnostic garbage to the fold. With all the respect for those who do that kind of reasoning, I see things, good or bad. The gray area in between, where you can say, well, I know, so then I'm more advanced than other people who don't know, and then I can overcome the controllers, the archons, as the Gnostic used to call them. Well, call them archons or call them demons. There's no difference there. They simply want to control us through our weaknesses, and we let it happen every day when we listen to certain music, watch certain films, and also get entangled in this never-ending political theater, because that's what it is. People are like so taken by the politics, when in reality politics, like you said, is only puppets around for their control.
Exactly. If you look at Project Mockingbird, I mean, that was really brought in, I think also sometime in the 60s, if memory serves me correctly, to spread misinformation through the news, the media, et cetera, and get people all up in arms, right? So that they really don't know what to believe anymore at the end of the day. So they spread their narrative through the newspapers, magazines, television, whatever it is. And now with every type of social media device or technological device that we have, with as you say, AI, GPT chat is a big one. I mean, you must see, we were actually, I was starting to research that, and I actually haven't finished, but you must see how through that they're leading children to things like bestiality. All sorts of things. They're normalizing that through these ways, and having kids have these cell phones, tablets, laptops, etc. at such an early age, without the authority of the parents there. They've just more and more, they've taken away the authority of the parents. They've given the children over to the government, and the government's little slaves, teachers, these crazy teachers, these crazy that I'm going to say teachers, kindergarten teachers at school, etc., that are absolutely pushing that new world order agenda. to the kids. And that's why when you're looking at all the singers, like I was saying again, Taylor Swift, or they used by these guys absolutely to haul the children in, because when you've got the kids, you've got the market. And that's exactly what it's about. And that's why I think, if we're going to do anything that's going to counteract that, we have to take care of our families. We have to take care of our kids.
Take care of their education. And unfortunately, every single educational establishment these days is run by these people. They are the ones that finance the major universities. So if your son is finally going in a great university, well, that's when you're going to lose your son to the ideology of the Antichrist. And it's not really worth losing your son to the ideology of the Antichrist, because, yes, he's going to a great university that's going to give him some great job. People, for example, here in America are still wondering, why is Nikki Haley fighting still for her future in the primaries when she knows that Donald Trump is winning? Because Nikki Haley has been promised millions and millions when she finishes this theater and by the libtards that we are trying to fight. And she's going to probably end up working again, maybe for Lockheed Martin, or doing some other job for the military industrial complex, or from some other company in the big pharma or whatnot. She is basically participating to these primaries, being a pain in the ass. I can't stand Nikki Haley personally, but Nikki Haley is the typical example of a corrupt person who doesn't even have any more a future in politics, because she's going to be in 1, 2, 3 years from now. Nobody's Nikki Haley. Who is Nikki Haley? But Nikki Haley will be paid hundreds and hundreds of millions a year to sit down as a CEO of this or this other company to thank her for being a pain in the ass in these elections. So while they're trying to bring down Donald J. Trump in every way possible and imaginable with the judiciary, they are also risking here the very base of American culture and the very base of the American dream. Because if we give up on at least this republic on which we stand here in America, there is no other democracy in the world. Though they like to say this is a constitutional republic. Of course, it's a constitutional republic. We have still the possibility, though, to vote at the moment. But for how long? We have seen here in California how everything is rigged, how Gavin Newsom, even during the recall, laughed his way through the recall and basically got re-elected, when the guy is a crook and a criminal who didn't respect anybody, who during the pandemic sit down drinking expensive wine in a nice fancy restaurant without any mask where everybody else was. So this is unfortunately what is happening here. We have already some states in America, some cities in America, the majority actually of cities, because in the cities the Democrats, as I call them, have already taken control, where you don't have a say anymore. And look at the results of it. These cities are crumbling down. They are, of course, they are full of homeless people, of people in trouble. Now there is a lot of talk about policemen being beaten up by immigrants in New York, that used to be called a sanctuary city, by the way. Right. It's like we need, of course, something new, but this new that we need is never going to be delivered to us because these people are still in charge. So it's a big problem, and I think it can be only solved eventually in the worst way possible, which is either a civil war or a division between two ways of life, in which you stand firm and you say, I want this way of life for my state, for my group of people, for my population. You want another way of life. Okay, fine. We don't interact anymore. That's it. That is, of course, something that in the globalized world is not a very popular topic. If I suddenly say I don't want to have any longer anything to do with China, well, that's not possible, for example, with California, with half of their industries getting everything done in China and then getting it brought directly here so then they can accede to the US market. It's so corrupt, the whole thing. So it's also very sad to see what they're doing. And we need to understand that these people are without any shame. I mean, Joe Biden is a shameless individual, but he is just the front of other shameless individuals like Soros. Alexander Soros recently spoke in Davos, and what he said was outrageous, I think. He was, really outrageous in what he was criticizing Trump and doing other things, just simply. But the Davos elite is firm in their plan because they are part of the problem. And unfortunately, we also saw all that parading of the shame and blowing in the face of people, all these world religions, the gurus, and all that. That is part of this. The religions today, organized religions, are in the hands of these people. There is not one organized religion in the whole world that is not corrupt by the Jesuits and the France. So if you are, you say, oh, but I have this pastor, this, if it's organized religion, is crookery, because organized religion has been infiltrated. Organized religion is simply now controlled by an establishment that eventually will put everything in the hands of the AI, and the AI will be the ultimate God. When the AI will now we are talking about deep fakes, but the deep fakes will manifest in front of our eyes in a few years, more and more. Like when people recently said that there was some weird stuff going on in Miami, aliens in a shopping mall, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And suddenly there was a lot of talk about UFOs, aliens, and whatnot. We have to understand that there is actually technology already available that can materialize in front of us, a 6 foot tall alien, and we will be probably shitting ourselves, saying, what is this? But this is happening, and it's going to happen more and more, because once the AI controls the show, they're going to make appear your dead mother in front of you, your dead father, your grandfather. They're going to start making appear angels in front of you, all kinds of things. And you will be like, what did I just see? He gave me a revelation. He told me to go and vote Joe Biden. Of course, I'm joking here, but I'm making an example of what might happen in the near future.
But it's already here, Leo. That's the thing. And I think it's already, I mean, if we're just looking at all these UFO and alien sightings, etc., I mean, what happened in Miami a couple of weeks ago, it's happening. The stuff is already here. And it's really just for us, we have to wake up, because when we as the human population can know what the agenda is, then I think we have much more of a chance of, and that's where our faith comes in, right? And discernment. And once we actually decide, we have the choice to say no to that bullshit. When it comes to that sort of thing, when we say no, and when we strong in our faith, and when we're aligned with God, it's okay. But more and more, but we have to wake up to the knowledge that this is happening, and people have got to, you just look everywhere, and people, when they're walking down the streets at their phones, they're just heads in their phones, in their computers, in their TV, they're not connected. When people reconnect spiritually, in other words, I mean, we talk about spiritual fitness, emotional fitness, mental fitness, physical fitness, then we're okay. But the majority of people, and sadly, currently, are not in that place yet. And I think it's so important that people can wake up. There has to be a mass awakening of human beings for us to realize. But I think most people are, I just look, and even, I look at a lot of my friends who are awake, and I'm, the stuff, and that's why as a South African, I look at the Americans to see what's happening with you guys, because if it's happening there, it's happening here, and I see it so strongly. and I'm trying to like portray this to my fellow countrymen, and they're looking at me like I've just crawled out of a piece of stinky cheese. And I'm going, guys, you've got to look at what's happening. This is what's happening. You got to take that. You got to connect it to that. You got to see how that's happening to see what that's happening. And then I get looked at like, and there are few of us that are waking up, but there are not nearly enough to see what the truth is, because we are being bamboozled with so much chaos, right? Because the whole thing is that for them to create chaos with the wars, with the pandemics, with people dying, you know, this crazy shit.
Wars in the Middle East, I think we need to really know the history of Islam to know that this is no religion of peace. Now, it might have been a religion of peace in the eyes of Muhammad, but soon after he died, the religion was, I mean, the first four caliphs after him might have been the righteous ones, but they all killed each other, left, right, and center. And later on, it led to schism upon schism. Then first we had the Shiites. Then the Shiites formed another faction that then became another faction. You know, the Fatimids.
Yeah, for sure.
The birth of the Druze, and the Druze hated, and they were killed. And everything is about, of course, murdering each other in the name of God, which is something that, of course, is completely laughable, and it doesn't respect none of the prophets that they say they believe in. So we have once again the Middle East on fire, and we see that the Sunni, the Shiites, and how the whole thing is being used. And you have the Sunnis, of course, used by the US basically, and England, Great Britain, sorry. So the Anglo-Saxon world is using the Sunnis, while the Shiites are used by Russia, China, and the whole confrontation is completely against any religious value that they say they stand for. Now, of course, we have discussed in the past Gaza, and we will not go back on it, but it's difficult not to go back on it with what is still happening. I think that the whole of the Middle East is exploding more and more in hate, but this is obvious also for other reasons that let's not forget. We had a pandemic, then we had the war in Ukraine expanding, because the war already started, let's say, with the coup d'etat in 2014, but simply expanded later on. But that meant less and less flour for these countries, and the incapacity for their leaders to control. So let's create more tension towards an outside enemy. In this case, the outside enemy that is favored by all the Middle Eastern countries is Israel, because Israel stands there as a punch bag that was created from the very start to be this punch bag for all of these countries. Now, these countries say, okay, we need to create, and of course, the US wants to recognize the state of Palestine. Okay, fine. But the problem is, why don't you, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, give a little piece of your land for this country of Palestine you want to create? Of course, they will not do that. Even if these countries are all new to the book, because they were all given their land by France and England. There was a treaty that was, and they were then on the back of that treaty, they created their own borders for countries that didn't even exist 100 years ago, when there was the Ottoman Empire and so on. So it's all about really hypocrisy. It's about, of course, the end times that we are viewing. They are unfolding in front of our eyes. The people, of course, that are creating all this, the Sabbatean Frankist heresy within Judaism, or the Jesuits within Christianity, because the Jesuits are not operating only controlling the Vatican or the Catholic Church. They control the Anglican Church. They control every single evangelical church in the world nowadays. So the religious aspect also is very much is very despicable. Is very against any real belief. We hope to have people like you and the people who are watching us being aware of all these things. And being aware of these things means studying what's happening and then taking a decision to not associate any longer with organized religion, and at the same time to be religious. And that is very difficult. Now, we saw that in a poll that was recently conducted here in the US, a growing number of people are actually saying they are religious, but they are not denominational. That might be a positive thing. But if being religious becomes make your own religion and basically become embracing what is a new age, because that is the new age ideology that creeps in.
Yeah, exactly.
Then that is not a positive thing neither, because
it's more like being a believer. You know, for me, it's about being a believer as opposed to being a religious nut, right? So that organized religion is really, we've seen over and over how it does not work. I mean, we see how many atrocities have gone down in the churches, right? When people have been blind to what's going on. We see how many atrocities the churches have covered over time, right? How much trafficking and sacrifice goes on in these places. But when we, I think when we become, it's like becoming wise and intelligent enough to understand what it is to be a true believer and to stand strong in that belief, where you are unwavering in your faith, but you are still not into the whole concept of this whole airy-fairy nonsense, right? So you are strong in your faith, and it's more understanding the heart of the person, right? It's more the heart of the person and learning how to understand that. For me, and it's also using that and creating communities with each other, standing together in a unified force, rather than going to some church where you're giving some pastor or some preacher your money and expecting them to fix all the problems that exist in you and in everyone else. We've got to realize we need to fix the problems in our own lives first, and then we can help those around us. For me, that's what it's about. That's what it is to be a true believer and to be strong in your faith and in your denomination. For me, that's why I say I'm not into denominations, because, as you say, they're all corrupt. All of them are corrupt. I mean, and they've all joined forces and told the world the biggest lies ever. So it really is up to us individuals that are smart enough to figure out what it is we need to do, and together we gather. We gather in our communities.
See the modern evangelical preachers, like somebody was mentioning also in the chat, that the guy Joel Austin, I can't stand him, more as motivational speakers than real religious leaders. These are motivational speakers. Give me 3 minutes of your time a day and I will raise your motivation. That is a motivational spirit. It's not a religious spirit coming through the guy. And it's two completely different things. Yeah. So, religion is still a very serious thing. And of course, everybody is free to believe in their own. I personally tend to say that you should stick to the religion of your own surroundings, because especially when it comes down to Europeans who have an ancient history, as well as other places that have an ancient history, they should stick to their belief systems. But having said that, like we said, the religions, the organized religions are corrupt. And so, like also you said, it's important to ourselves, make ourselves better with whatever we believe and reflect that light, that belief into the outside world. And of course, we have also this new push for all things that seem to be not really natural, like transgenderism, but also many other things that are unnatural. And that is, of course, part of destroying the fabric of human society, destroying the family unit. They have done it very successfully from the end of the 60s onwards, and they have preached all this liberation, sexual freedom and all that. But of course, this came to the expense of the family unit, which in turn is something that now only the rich people have. If you see a rich person, he has 6, 7, 8 kids. Oh wow! How many kids does Elon Musk have? How many kids has a Bill Gates?
10, yes, 10.
I can't even afford 1 kid. And that is not just. You see, that's what happened to the normal person who can't afford 1 kid, He says, I can't afford even 1 kid, and these people have 10 kids. Why is that? Because, we are kept to, in a way, we are forced into being, in extinguishing ourselves. Because once they have the robots to replace us, they want to simply extinguish us. It's like Mark Zuckerberg and these other people who they're all preaching for green economy, and a lot of people, you eat the insects, you can eat and then Bill Gates, the lab meat and all that. But then Mark Zuckerberg in Hawaii has a special farm where he's growing the most expensive meat in the world, where he gives these animals the most expensive things so that their meat is tender and lovely. So the rich people are continuing to eat meat. Don't worry, vegans or vegetarians out there. They are continuing to eat you have to eat insects or whatever other thing you want. But that is what they're doing. So you see, they have also constructed very carefully the vegetarian. Yeah. I tend to think that we have to have a balanced diet. I don't tend to think that eating too much meat is, of course, is bad for you. Like eating too much carbohydrates or eating too much of everything. So we need to have a balanced diet. But of course, they have forced in the mentality of the woke young people that meat is evil, that you need to eat only greens and this and that. But I personally made some experiments on my own body, being a vegetarian for some years or a vegan for some, and trying to see the reactions of my body, and the reactions were not very good. And in the end, I was forced into eating back some meat, because otherwise my white cells in the body were overpopulating and I was actually getting sick. So you can say, oh, but you just get some integrators. Well, okay, sure. Because that's what they want, some supplements that, of course, you will purchase from the usual suspects. Because nowadays, even the big pharma owns most of the industry that creates supplements. So this is what's happening. They are pushing on us certain things, but they do the exact opposite. It's a bit like what we said earlier with the airplanes, the private airplanes, the carbon print of a guy like John Kerry, who is still, until John Podesta came in, the climate advisor. And they are basically preaching what they don't do. So they can say whatever they want. They are saying now that champagne is not something that we should drink because it's not sustainable. But then they have lavish parties in Davos filled with champagne. Davos was filled with escorts, prostitution, drugs, all kinds of things. But you have to be moral. You have to be respecting everything, and you have to be under a thumbnail for anything that we say. That is what, and especially, like we said, you can't have children because you can't simply afford them, because they make it impossible for a normal guy to bring and raise up a family like they do. So
there's no integrity. There's no integrity, and that's becoming more and more obvious. So the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and there's no middle class now anymore. So it's the typical. It's the whole recipe for communism, and that's what really is what they're gunning for right now. The new world order.
Somebody in the chat was saying, I was thinking of converting to Catholicism, but like said, that just bothered. Well, Catholicism might be I was born a Catholic. I believe in certain tenets of the Catholic faith, but the people who are running the Catholic religion are a bunch of crooks and criminals. We have a 2,000-year-old pedophile sect running the And basically, since the Second Vatican Council, they have destroyed the tenets of their own religion, and they're simply embracing this new one-world religion that soon is going to come into being, because let's not forget that Pope Francis has been working behind the scenes with the Muslims, with the Buddhists, with the Jews, with everybody, to put everything together, and in the name of Fratelli Tutti. That was the name of his encyclical, which was basically a Masonic document, because above all, the religion of these people is Freemasonry. Even if Freemasonry is said to not be a religion,
Right.
what they do behind the scenes, though, is still to aggregate and put together all these religions in this under the same roof and say, do you believe in God? Okay, the great architect. And the all-seeing eyes on top of you. Now, I know that there's a lot of Masons who are good people, and a lot of good Masons who do good things. But unfortunately, like every other institution, not only Freemasonry, but every other institution today, they are infiltrated and they are conducted towards the bad path that embraces the wrong values. So today, the people inside the Masonic Lodge are also woke, and especially here in California, the lodges are just mouthpieces for progressive propaganda, even if they shouldn't, because religion and politics in theory should be forbidden in lodges. But that is what is happening. So we are standing in front of a situation also when it comes to these secret societies. The Skull and Bones, for example, and I wrote this in a recent article of mine, the one on John Kerry also. It used to be a conservative outlet. You have people like the Bushes, for example, no? That were neocons, by the way, and they were not that great either, but they were at least, it was a conservative outlet. Instead, now, they said that since 2021, they have only initiated socialists, people who actually embraced socialist organization, and they are totally left-wing. So they have made the Skull and Bones Lodge a woke center. So from the 17th onwards, they gradually embraced women, then colored. This is right. Okay, you should embrace everybody. But then they made basically this organization become another mouthpiece for the left. And and this happens with all the secret society on campus in Harvard, in Berkeley. Berkeley actually is historically very much connected with Aleister Crowley and the OTO. So it's like really, if you go on any kind of campus, and if you want to study in a university in America, you should be an exorcist, because when you go inside of them, it's like they're all possessed, especially their professors, who
I agree,
are also often accused of plagiarism these days. There was an accused of plagiarism for the one who was in charge of Harvard, that was basically pushed to resign recently because she didn't oppose the anti-Semitic rants on campus. But the same also for the woman who was chief of the ECHO, I don't know, some kind of racial organ to supervise that everything was integrated. And there were people who actually plagiarized other people to arrive to that position. So they are not even intellectually capable. The people in charge of these universities these days are intellectually vacant. They simply people who copy and paste, arrive there with a thesis which is fake. The thesis is basically accepted simply because of the color of the skin. Okay, she's black, so we're going to make her pass this thesis. You have a doctorate, a PhD, and whatever you want. We're going to give you even, you're going to become the head of this or that in a university. It doesn't work that way. I'm sorry, it doesn't work. So,
and it's been happening a lot. I mean, you're seeing these kids going into university looking pretty normal, and then you see them a year or two later, they've completely shaved their hair, full of tattoos, or change their sex. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. It really is.
And then, you have, of course, the crisis that is being created by all this, because while these people are fixated on issues that have no importance, like the color of the skin or things that were already surpassed. I mean, we thought that with the 70s, with the 60s and the 70s, and then got into the 80s, okay, fine, but we didn't need to go back so much on these topics, which are now deemed as essential. Inclusivity. You have to be inclusive.
Right.
Is the guy gender fluid? Nowadays, apparently, for example, in Great Britain, by a poll that has been conducted, if you're not gender fluid in your youth, you're not considered cool. So basically, young people who go around and say, I'm straight. No, that's not cool. No, you have to be fluid.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you are narrow-minded.
Otherwise, you are accused of being narrow-minded and a fascist. So the mark of the beast,
exactly, and a racist as well.
So the mark of the beast, unfortunately, is here. The prophecies are manifesting. Is up to us to, of course, accept them and possibly be. I mean, at least in my case, I'm a Christian believer. But we are about to face what the Christians have always called the end times, and it's of course part of it will culminate with something that eventually will be positive, but first there will be a lot of negative stuff that we will have to go through. So in the meantime, God bless you all, and let's try to survive another month to our next show.
I agree. Thank you, Leo. It's always a great hoot having you on. And thank you so much. I know you're haven't been feeling 100%. And I hope the show perked you up a little bit. It was great having you back again. And we shall have you back in a couple of weeks again. Just a reminder that Leo's on the last Friday of every month. Today is not the last Friday, but he was not well last week. So we'll see you again last Friday in February. Take care, everybody. Leo, thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to just say before we end off?
Check my website every now and then for the latest articles, leozagami.com. And of course, you will find also the links to my latest books. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Leo. God bless you. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much. See you soon.